All right, I believe this means we are live. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, tech fans of all shapes and sorts and sizes and persuasions, welcome to a very special holiday episode of the SGGQA podcast. I'm Juan Carlos Bagnell, aka Some Gadget Guy, the SGG of this terribly named podcast series, and the QA, of course, standing for question and answer, as we like to talk through the top tech stories of our industry with a little interaction. So if you're catching this on the live stream, I like interacting with the live chat, and we make this more of a conversation than me just ranting and railing and soapboxing, even though there's a fair bit of that too. Everyone, I want to say thank you so much for joining. This is Martin Luther King Jr. Day, so I'm hoping that a lot of you have the day off. You're able to spend some time with family and friends, and that if, you choose to, you could spend a little time with this podcast too. But I'm already seeing some activity in the live chat. LFA Reviews If you're not following LFA's channel and you care about your ears in the slightest, then you should be following his YouTube channel for some amazing headphone reviews. If you absolutely hate your ears, like you just want to do as much damage to your ears as possible, then don't follow LFA. Jeff's a good dude. You should give him a follow regardless. Vazikos 8, Matt Tyler. We're gonna talk through some fun stuff here, and also I'm hoping to keep this show a little bit lighter, a little bit more streamlined on the news. We've got some gadget chat to get into. There was a massive update for the LG V50 getting Android 10 and some really fun new features to talk about there. So we're going to be talking about that in the second half of the show. And then also, I just have a fun story to share in term talking about repairability. We've covered right to repair legislation a lot. And it was just one of those reinforcing moments for the Gadget Lab where instead of replacing a piece of technology, I got it repaired and it felt phenomenal. Like, again, it's irrationally exciting when some of our gadgets can still be fixed. So that's going to be in the second half of the podcast. Just to start, those few words, I don't have anything planned here, so this is going to be a little rambly. When we have days on the calendar, there are so many, like National Hot Dog Day or International Eat 3 Donuts Day or something like that. Obviously, the more fun and gimmicky types of themed days, probably not super high on your radar. But regardless of your political ideology or your political leanings, I do like to have those moments of reflection when there's a Labor Day or a Veterans Day or a Memorial Day. And same thing with today being MLK Jr. Day, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day. I think it's important to take that just that one little moment. You wake up, you have some coffee, just to reflect on where we've been as a society, where we've come as a society, and the work that still needs to be done in our various societies. Made even more precious for my family because, my 4-year-old is starting to ask questions. We see a commercial pop up about Martin Luther King, or she sees something on, mommy's phone about Dr. Martin Luther King, and she's starting to ask those questions, and we're starting to have some of these conversations about things like rights and equality and what it means to be a citizen. And it's exciting, what questions she has and the angle that she comes at when we talk about something like fairness is remarkable. Because kids are a lot savvier than I think a lot of us give them credit for. So with your circles of family and friends, I hope you get this day off, or you get something, you get to do something on a day like today. But with that extra time, I hope you take the second. I hope you just kind of look around you and appreciate the successes and think about ways that we can improve on some of the less evolved aspects of our society. So with that said, I'm already getting over-unders for housekeeping. Housekeeping in 9 minutes. Matt Tyler giving me a fist bump. Whoa, Matt Tyler's plan is to hit 30 subs gifted by the end of this. Only 2 gift subs to go. So, Steve Q3 Becker saying, hello, people of the geekery complexion. My complexion could definitely use a little help. I certainly resemble that comment. And do we have Fat Produce is in the house? Excellent. I'm hoping Fat Produce is one of those folks who got today off. After joining the Brosifs, Andrew, Fat Produce, was kind enough to send over some locally roasted coffee, which my wife and I plowed through this morning. It was delicious. I want to say thanks for sending that my way. Goran Petrovic saying, hey, all. Everyone say hey to Goran. And Drevin61, I see your 9 and I raise you 2. Drevin saying 11 minutes for housekeeping. And MPCRSC562 on Mixer, just throwing up a peace sign. I think we could all use a little more peace in our lives. So let's get into some housekeeping. I'm going to try and keep this pretty lean. Like I said, it's Martin Luther King Jr. Day. We've got some family activities planned just because we have a 3-day weekend. And and like I said, I want to get to the second half of this podcast and really talk about some gadget in the hand gadget news. So housekeeping, let's blow through this. Let's see if we can beat 9 minutes. The most important, the most critical, the biggest announcement for this channel. I finally kicked off the official hashtag 2020 hearing, and I've never been more excited to share a hashtag. I did not resize my window for the video stream. Let's just fix that. Good job, OBS. Dropping the link in the live chat. 2020 hearing is going to be my major focus for the year 2020. And I've already written scripts for 10 videos. I've got 10 more planned. Very short form, very punchy, and trying to tackle hearing health topics, audio tech topics, and audio entertainment topics. Very short form, aggressive, but also entertaining ways to talk about this stuff. So those videos are going to start going live the end of this week. I'm kind of planning on one major 2020 hearing video a week, and then hopefully some supplemental content, interviews, more detailed like hands-on tips and tricks, things like that. So those might be more monthly features with a weekly video tackling some kind of topic about hearing health. And we're going to keep it, I'm going to start simple. I mean, we're going to start from the very beginning. The first video I have planned is just talking about the different types of headphones. So, you know, we could go circumaural, supraaural, interaural, open back, closed back, on ear, in ear, bone conduction. I really want to start addressing those topics where consumers have a better understanding of all of the various different options. Because I think a lot of consumers have been conditioned to only sort of acknowledge, you know, well, this is what came with my phone and that's super popular, so now that's what I use. And not understanding like the fit and finish is a very broad topic. It can be a little overwhelming, and it can be very frustrating when you're shopping something and you don't know if it's going to fit right. But to be aware of those options means that you'll have a better chance of landing something that's the right fit for you. In addition to making more video content in 2020, I've been a little frustrated just looking at my own YouTube feed and trying to find good long-term coverage on gadgets. Like I don't get my hands on every single phone that comes out, especially, you know, some of the biggest manufacturers don't seem particularly interested in me doing reviews on their products. But because I've been frustrated by this, I'm going to try and be the change I want to see in the world. Not everything can be a fully produced video. So I'm actually taking to writing more articles. You might have noticed I've been writing more editorials for the longer term coverage, for the longer term review side of this. My favorite features to produce outside of the camera reviews when I was at Pocket Now, my favorite features were After the Buzz. And I don't think anyone's really kind of taken up that mantle. I don't think Pocket Now has done an After the Buzz in a while. And those to me were the most important, the most critical parts of the review. After 6 months, has the manufacturer lived up to those expectations? So I'm starting to do that on my own channel. Looking at Android 10 updates, I've already done a written article on the OnePlus 6 and the OnePlus 6T. I forget, I did another one that now I can't remember, but the one that I released last week was a more in-depth look at Android 10 on the Xperia 5. And while obviously I think one of the main things that I wanted to just kind of take a look at were gestures on such a tall and skinny phone, I also have been trying to be a bit more consistent about things like performance testing. So, you know, when I'm doing my video rendering test on launch day software, it's also important that we take a look at video performance when the phone is getting an update. You know, an operating system update can sometimes tank performance. We want to see if it improves performance. Outside of just a Geekbench score, which doesn't really tell the whole story, I'm looking at things like RAR compression. There's a RAR or like rar. Sorry, I can't help that. But looking at ways that you can compress files, stabilize files. I'm looking at other real world things that we can test to look at smartphone performance, and then how that performance evolves, improves, or gets worse over time. So that article is live, SomeGadgetGuy.com. I'll drop the link to this one too. And then lastly, just because 2020 Hearing is going to be a year full of audio tech, one of my first audio reviews of 2020 is looking at the Mod Mic. A quick little review. I've been reviewing Mod Mics since the Mod Mic 4. And now they've got wireless options, a super simple 3.5 millimeter plug option. That's the Mod Mic Uni, and the Mod Mic USB. Now, the Mod Mic USB is what I used to record this entire, the voiceover for this entire video. So it's not just, here's a quick sample so you can hear how it's different than my nice studio mic. This is what you would hear if you were gaming and there was TeamSpeak and someone was using a Mod Mic in your game chat. The entire video was produced with the Mod Mic 2020, the Mod Mic USB. And that's something I've been dying for Mod Mic to do, is they've got USB adapters, but just build the USB cable directly into the Mod Mic. For those of you who don't know, Mod Mic is a way that it's just this boom mic with a little magnetic clip. And so you take your own pair of headphones, you take a pair of headphones that you already like, you think are already comfortable, you like the sound quality, and you stick on just this one little magnetic clasp, and then you can convert any pair of headphones into a decent gaming headset. So that's one of the first reviews out. I'm gonna have some more headphone reviews. I've got some low-cost Bluetooth options. I'm gonna be doing a little showdown between, I think I wanna do a showdown between MPOW and Mixter. Two companies with reputations that like the lowest cost Bluetooth with active noise canceling headphone companies out there, in addition to also tackling some of the most expensive options in the market. I kind of want to bookend it like, these probably aren't the best for high fidelity sound, and they probably won't last the longest, but for $50, you can get something pretty decent. Q3 Brecker, RAR compression. So there's a lot of stuff that I want to kind of keep pace with. Some of this means more of this content, more of this production is going to be written, just so that I can get this stuff out. If everything has to be a 4K video with intros and segments and transitions, and let me thank all the people here, and here's a list of credits scrolling by on the screen. That means some of these projects just won't get made. So that's housekeeping. Three major articles out, and then I'm gonna tease what we've got coming out on the channel at the end of the podcast. But it was a pretty solid week last week, and lots of legwork. I did my first day shoots for the full camera review on the iPhone 11 Pro. I'm going to be trying, I think tonight, I'm going to take the iPhone 11 Pro out for my night shoots, and then I'll be able to set up a gallery to start sharing with the Patreon. We do photo and video galleries for all of my smartphone reviews, camera reviews. So this is a daunting amount of work, but it's exciting stuff. There are a lot of fun challenges coming out. I have no idea how long housekeeping was there. So it was probably, I don't know that we hit under 9, because I did still ramble on a little bit more. But let me get this out of the way here. Mr. Pulp Fiction wants me to say something in Spanish. What's proper Spanish? I come from New Mexico, and we speak the whiniest Spanglish. I try not to subject people to my sort of mutt accent. What I really, if money were no object, and like tomorrow I won the lottery, I would want to study Spanish in Argentina. I have always thought that like delicate European trill, there's almost like an Italian quality to Argentinian Spanish. It's just that little bit more lyrical than New Mexican old world Spanglish. That to me would be where I would want to study and proper fix my ability to speak Spanish. I mean, don't get me wrong. I like Castilian. Castilian is delightful. But actually, if I were going to study anything in Spain, I'd actually want to learn Catalan. Traveling to Barcelona, I'm not going to be going to MWC this year. I just can't swing the finances for it to go solo. I guess there's still a chance I could go with another outlet, but it's getting too close to make that kind of travel. But whenever I go to Barcelona, it's like I have no idea what anyone's saying, but it sounds beautiful. So Argentinian Spanish and Catalan would be my Rosetta Stone or Duolingo, Duolingo educational opportunities. So let's get into some proper news. And I want to kick things off with a pair of iPhone stories and law enforcement. Now, this is something we've talked about quite a bit. Oh, Matt Tyler says I hit housekeeping in 8 minutes. And then I went and rambled on longer talking about how I can't speak Spanish very well. Oh, and Sam is doing Russian on Duolingo. You know, I should... I have no ear for a lot of... I should play with that. I cribbed Russian for a voiceover casting that I did. Oh man, it was like 6 years ago now. I can't even remember the name of the company, but it was a Russian chocolatier, and it was an English translation of the script, and it was terrible. Like I could tell by the English that this is not what they were trying to say in Russian. But their tagline was "Be sweet." "Быть сладким" is the only thing I can remember. And I cribbed for 2 weeks to be able to direct in pidgin Russian just so that I could kind of understand what it was that I was saying. And then as soon as that casting was done, every little bit of Russian that I had tried to just cram into my skull evaporated. So I'd like to get back to that. I would like to be better than just sort of in the moment pidgin monolingual. It would be nice, being the filthy American that I am, to be able to competently speak more than one language. So, yes, to news, to politics, and a story that we've been revisiting since I've revived this podcast. I am very concerned about our law enforcement, both like state and federal law enforcement's continued persistence in the fight against consumer encryption. It seems every couple of months something happens in the world of law enforcement and mobile where people high up in the law enforcement food chain decide that they need manufacturers to break the products that they sell so that law enforcement has an easier time gaining access to the contents of mobile devices. And especially in a world of biometric security, these types of stories I find very concerning because, excuse me, I drank way too much coffee before starting this podcast. These types of stories are concerning because it's never been easier to force access to a device. The notion of separating a password legally, we're still having these debates in a lot of states where a password is information in your brain and law enforcement cannot force you to divulge that information. But if access to your device is your face, well, that's kind of publicly accessible information. So the notion of a law enforcement officer just holding a phone up to your face to get it to verify or to unlock is a sticky legal question. I've been I've been encouraged that there have been a couple state challenges where law enforcement should not be able to force someone to unlock a device with their face. But these are ongoing legal challenges that are still being fought in the courts. And I mean, honestly, the best way to maintain any type of security is really to go back to a PIN or a password. While biometrics are convenient, locking the device with information that can only be accessed by your brain is the way to go. Excuse me. So we over the last week we got another series of news reports about iPhones and law enforcement. The first one here, I want to throw this one up on the screen share. Let me get the link so that we can drop this in the chat. Is coming by way of 9to5Mac, and this, to me, seems like the cat and mouse game we should be playing. There's the link right there. Let me go into screen share. And this is written up by Chance Miller. Report, FBI recently unlocked an iPhone 11 Pro with Gray Key, raising more doubts about the Pensacola case. From the first couple paragraphs here. As Apple stands firm against requests to break iPhone encryption, many people have questioned why the FBI needs Apple's help in the first place. There are plenty of tools available from third-party companies that are more than capable of unlocking the iPhone 5 and iPhone 7 used by the Pensacola gunman. Further emphasizing that point, a new report from Forbes says that the FBI recently used one of those black or gray market tools to unlock the newest and theoretically the most secure iPhone that Apple sells. According to the report, FBI investigators in Ohio used the Gray Key hardware box to unlock an iPhone 11 Pro Max. The phone in question belonged to Baris Ali Koch, who has been accused of helping his convicted brother escape the country by letting him use his passport. From a little later in the article, the Gray Key is a hardware box sold by forensics firm Grayshift that has long been used by law enforcement and investigators to gain access to locked iPhones. Details about the Gray Key are usually kept under wraps, including whether it works on Apple's newest operating systems in iPhones. This is generally to make it harder for Apple to patch the vulnerabilities that Grayshift uses. So, I wanted to point this story out first. I think consumer protections and tools like encryption should be a cat and mouse game. With every generation of new products, consumers get better tools to safeguard their data, and then those who are looking to break into those devices, either nefarious bad actors or law enforcement, should be trying to build better tools to break that encryption. And I feel like that should be the cycle. We should be fighting back and forth, and it's through that struggle that we also get the best hope for good tools. And when those tools are tested out in the field, then they're refined and then they're improved upon. Like some of the reports, I know on earlier phones, like Grayshift was doing something similar to copying encrypted materials and setting up a virtual environment where they could just brute force try and crack a PIN or a password. And the more complex the password was, the longer it would take to crack or break. Now we know that an iPhone, if you try and put in the password 10 times, it's going to nuke the information on that iPhone. But if you completely copy the iPhone environment and you run 9 versions of the PIN, and then you reset and you run a new virtual environment for that iPhone, you run 9 more chances. You can keep cycling that way to eventually brute force a PIN on an iPhone. It's that type of... See, like, I think that's really ingenious. It's that type of development. It's that type of ingenuity that then is going to force Apple to make something more secure than the phone that came out before it. Especially once we saw that jailbreak, where it's up to the iPhone 10, I believe. Someone correct me if I'm wrong in the chat, but I believe up to the iPhone 10 now, there's nothing Apple can really do to completely patch iPhone 7 to iPhone 10 for a proper jailbreak. So those folks out there in the jailbreak community were really excited about the ability to modify their phones. Apple now has a clear target on specific vulnerabilities for whatever comes after the iPhone 11. That improves our products, and the public disclosure of those vulnerabilities and these types of tools like Grayshift will encourage Apple to continue to improve our gadgets. From Fat Produce, good point with it being the FBI. I wonder how many times we see this happening at more local levels. And we know, especially in New York, there was a recent, we talked about it on the podcast, that New York's attorney general was looking, AD or AG? AD, district attorney. I honestly can't remember now. What exactly the level of law enforcement was, but they were talking about having a backlog of cases that they needed data from phones. Same thing here in California. We've seen a lot of pressure from local law enforcement to speed up the acquisition of information on mobile devices. From Sam, 20 miles. If this happened to my local police department, they would immediately go to the FBI. That's their jam, and resources are huge. And yes, we will be talking about the European Union forcing companies to use a standard charger. And from Sam, all forensics labs are overloaded. So with that idea in mind, that local police departments are having issues with mobile devices, getting data off of them, and encryption, I do find it interesting. We've just had this case. The FBI looks like they might have the tools to properly unlock the newest iPhones, the iPhone 11 Pro Max, which is why it was also interesting over this last week that the Justice Department was publicly putting a lot of pressure on Apple again to make iPhones easier to crack. So, clicking over here, this is from the Wall Street Journal, but this was picked up by a number of different outlets. As Justice Department pressures Apple, investigators say iPhone easier to crack. Written up by Robert McMillan. From the article, the escalation of... There we go. The escalation of a long-running encryption conflict between the Justice Department and Apple has puzzled security experts who say the new hacking tools have made it possible to gain access to many of the company's devices in criminal investigations. Attorney General William Barr ratcheted up pressure on Apple on Monday, painting the company as unhelpful to the government as it seeks to unlock 2 iPhones belonging to an aviation student from Saudi Arabia, who authorities say killed 3 people at a Florida Navy base last month. Mr. Barr described the phones as engineered to make it virtually impossible to unlock them without the password. This is also, I think, the most telling when it comes to our current administration's view on security and interacting with corporations. Quote, we are helping Apple all of the time on trade and so many other issues, and yet they refuse to unlock phones used by killers, drug dealers, and other violent criminal elements, President Trump said in a tweet Tuesday evening. He called on the company to help, quote, now, end quote. I don't think it could be clearer that our current leadership, especially the chief executive, the president of the United States, immediately views every aspect of interaction between other countries and manufacturers and companies as some kind of immediate quid pro quo. The political ramifications of law enforcement actions to open devices really doesn't have anything to do with international trade. Apple sending Tim Cook to lobby this administration directly for a different approach to dealing with China and trade and tariffs has almost nothing to do with the security aspects of trying to break the devices that they manufacture and sell. And one of the reasons why I want to highlight that specifically, Apple is a private institution. They are they're a publicly traded company, but they are a company. They are not a part of the United States government. But the way that our government currently operates, a pretty significant portion of government officials are likely using iOS devices as their primary work communication device. Apple should not be tasked with both ensuring the encryption and the security of these devices while also being the primary tool to breaking the encryption that makes them viable to be used as government devices. This has been a pretty consistent disconnect in this discussion. It's very cavalier and it's very easy to point out, well, Apple could make like a secret skunkworks where they crack the firmware internally and then we could send the device to Apple and then they could unlock it and then give it back to us. It's really easy to say. That is nearly impossible to implement and then to keep contained. There was a Joe Rogan podcast where he's got I think his name is Mike Baker. I'm a really big fan of a lot of what Mike Baker talks about in the world of sort of a former CIA employee. But I remember there was this one podcast Mike Baker's on, and he's saying like, well, yeah, Apple could do this. I mean, there's no reason why they couldn't. It would actually be really easy for Apple to create like a custom firmware that would then be utilized only in this specific case. And then like 10 minutes later in that same podcast, he's talking about how every government on the planet has operatives moving throughout multi-billion-dollar corporations, and you can't keep anything secret. And I just like that security disconnect still hasn't reached our current law enforcement and our executive office here in the United States. You can't have both. If Apple makes a secure device, that's a good device for governments and for populations and citizens to use. If Apple cracks that software, it makes the device way more vulnerable to bad actors, and there's legitimately no way Apple could keep that tool completely safe and contained. That's just not feasible. As soon as Apple were to do something like that, one, they would get hounded by innumerable requests to unlock devices from from law enforcement and governments around the world, and two, they wouldn't be able to keep that tool in check. It would eventually leak out. And that's the most frustrating aspect of this. It's not a liberal or a conservative issue. We were having these same discussions back during the Obama administration because the leadership for law enforcement doesn't cycle in the same way that our elected officials do when we have a general election. So this is another one. If you were inclined to write to an elected official, a local state official, a senator, House of Rep, member, congressman, congresswoman, congressperson. This is one that I would put on the list. I think we need to stop dedicating government time and government resources to trying to force manufacturers to open their products and make our gadgets less secure and less safe. And I think we need to let law enforcement know that other opportunities are probably more readily accessible to them than convincing Apple to break the iPhone. I'm very grateful that Apple has taken the track that they have, being one of the market leaders, especially in North America, puts a pretty clear target on their backs, but then also encourages every other manufacturer to kind of play ball in a similar way. They can hide behind Apple on this one. They hide behind Apple for getting rid of the headphone jack. They can also hide behind Apple for giving us better encryption. So that it's another story. Whenever the story pops up, we've got to talk about it, because I feel once the initial fervor dies down, general consumers are probably frustrated. Oh, there's information on an iPhone. Why can't Apple just open it for them? But then if they lost their phone and someone just took it to an Apple store and then they got all their banking information off of their phone, they would be very upset that Apple unlocked their phone. So it's very difficult to kind of get the better education out for why consumers should care about this. At the same time, you can cloak it in that fear of, lawbreakers and criminals are using iPhones to do nefarious things. Apple should work with us to make sure that that we can stop those evildoers, which is grossly oversimplifying the situation. Guys, are you talking about Brexit in the live chat? Come on. From Sam 20 Miles, I wouldn't do that. Chain of custody issues, and Apple may not want to document it properly. That's actually another great point. Again, I love it when it's so simple. We'll just make like a box, and we'll put this phone in a box, and then Apple will unlock the phone and keep everything safe. It's up to Apple to guarantee the safety of all these devices, and then we'll take it back. Actually, chain of custody is another huge issue because law enforcement would want those tools in-house. So Apple would develop this tool, and then somehow magically NYPD or LAPD would just totally keep the iPhone cracking tool totally safe, and no one would ever get their hands on it. It's Thexy Pat. We need a constitutional amendment that treats tech as an extension of our minds and very being, making them protected from the government and search and seizure. And we're fighting this state by state. We've been seeing, like I said, encouraged. A number of recent court cases have leaned towards the information on your phone being property and being protected, especially the Fifth Amendment. But making it state by state like that means that there are going to be cracks and crevices in policy, how it's implemented. And then I'm sure there have been cases where someone on the edges of their authority might have done something a little unseemly, or again, I'm totally speculating here, and that's actually not fair. But I look at something like Face Unlock growing in popularity, and I just think it's so easy to co-opt that. It's so easy to manipulate the situations around biometric security to get what you want out of a device, and it makes me anxious. It makes me a little nervous. And then Sam actually brings that point up. When you're making laws, you create legal challenges and loopholes. Not having some sort of overarching guideline or standard, because let's say there were some sort of federal mandate as to the protection of content. Let's say we even somehow managed to amend the Constitution for the protection of digital privacy and digital content and information. There would still be laws on the ground, state by state, that could alter the interactions between citizens and law enforcement. But again, it would be a better spine. It would be a better backbone guideline for us all to start from. It's just whether or not we'll ever see a political environment where those elected have the will to expend some of their political capital to really take care of some of this geeky, nerdy stuff. I mean, you see how our favorite topics, tech topics, are handled by traditional media, and it's like, they're holding like a dead rat. Oh, and we have to talk about this because it's net neutrality, but it's stinky because it's nerdy. And then they try and get back onto, like whatever celebrity gossip is happening. It's going to be up to us to kind of keep the pressure on these conversations. Well, so I know I've been focusing, on the criminal justice aspects of this, but there's a conversation happening between Sam and it's Thexy Pat. If you want to be a bad actor and commit crime, keep it off of discoverable media. Remember, if one other person or if it's documented, it's no longer a secret. I am going to also just posit the argument that personal privacy is just as much a concern for the general citizenry as whether or not a bad actor or a criminal wants to commit crime. The idea that we're going to be moving to phones as authentication devices already, they're the primary interface for a lot of our web activities. They're increasingly becoming a point of purchasing. All of your banking information, your medical data, all of this information is going through a very leaky portable computer to make it easier for law enforcement to authenticate your identity, say there's some sort of like Real ID Digital Act where, you know, you could have like a copy of your driver's license on your phone. I think not my appearance on All About Android, but I want to say 3 weeks ago, they did talk about there were initiatives in some local governments to look at the feasibility of putting your ID on your phone. Well, how do you give that information to a police officer at a traffic stop and not give your whole life to that officer as well? We need to have really secure walled gardens so that, you know, they take your phone and then you also say, oh, well, you got an email from your weed dealer, you know, like that's self-incrimination through the act of complying with a law enforcement officer's request. So those types of challenges are going to be enormous over the next couple of years, which is why we've got to keep revisiting the political aspect of this type of ramification. Right now, we have a presidential administration that isn't going to be very good for that type of civil liberty and privacy, especially as they're hammering companies like Apple to quid pro quo. We helped you with those tariffs. Now help us break the iPhone is a terrible place to be negotiating from as the president of the United States. That's really bad. So, hold on, let me take another drink of water here. And also, it's just not a liberal or a conservative argument. I mean, there are going to be different aspects that are left-leaning and right-leaning, but the main core of this is the tech argument, and is we should have the best products that we can get access to. Consumers should have access to the best protections that they can afford. All right, you guys were already chatting this out in the live chat. This was also another surprisingly big story over the last week, and I was a little surprised that it seemed to have legs. We went through this at the dawn of micro USB, and the EU is making another play. I'm pulling up a Gizmodo article here, but again, this was covered pretty wide. Let me get this out of the way here. The dream of a common charger is alive despite Apple's complaining. Who wrote this up? Victoria Song. The filed under I would give my left boob to kiss lightning goodbye. That's cute, Gizmodo. Good job. I didn't catch that when I first caught this story. So, from the article, the European Parliament is fed up with e-waste, in particular charging cables. To fix the problem, lawmakers are debating a binding measure that would force gadget makers to use a standardized charging plug. And this isn't the first time we've seen this from Europe. One reason why micro USB is so prevalent is back in 2009, the European Commission pushed for it as a universal standard on the continent. Even Apple, the notorious standout in the world of proprietary chargers, acquiesced and made available a micro USB adapter. Of course, it was Europe only. Now, this initiative expired in 2014. European lawmakers tried again to force a common charger, reiterating that it would be not only convenient for consumers, but it would also limit e-waste. The only problem was the initiative called for a voluntary approach, a strategy that in a briefing the European Parliament said has not yielded the desired results and fell short of the co-legislators' objectives. And while the briefing doesn't specify exactly what port type it has in mind, at this point, USB-C is the likeliest contender. So, let me get this out of the way here. It's tough. We're still dealing with multiple generations of products. Because I come from an audio background, it's always very disappointing that audio manufacturers are some of the slowest to adopt new technologies and to be on current cabling standards, because in the world of audio manufacturers, a cable and a standard should last for 100 years. Quarter-inch jacks and XLR connectors are centuries old, are decades old connection standards, and they're actual standards. So you can count on, I have an XLR port and I plug it into a mixer and the mic lights up and we go and record, and that works because it always works because it has to work. It's been frustrating that the technology side of this hasn't evolved as quickly. And in fact, I've got a brand new microphone right here, and it's got, you can't see when I don't have autofocus on, and it's got micro USB. So when we talk about technology, when we talk about gadgets and phones and laptops and tablets, the market on its own does a pretty good job of pointing consumers towards some type of compatibility. I think USB-C, the connector USB-C is pretty much one. The frustrating side, the flip side of that, is that USB-C can have difficulties in it being a universal spec. Different charging standards for different phones and chargers. Thunderbolt uses the same connector, even though it's technically a different, it is not technically, it is a different connection standard, but it uses the same cabling. It would be nice if just like all computers were Thunderbolt and then USB was just sort of included in the compatibility list. Even Apple has largely made the transition. iPads, MacBooks, the accepted cabling standard is USB-C. It's just the iPhone is a dominant sales force in smartphone sales, and it's still Lightning. And that's rough. When I did my Pro phone showdown, I've got the iPhone 11 Pro Max, and I'm comparing it against the LG V50, and I got a lot of angry comments on that video. But one of the things that I think severely hamstrings the iPhone is the Lightning connector. It's old tech. It doesn't appear to be upgradable in any form. It requires those who want to get more out of an iPhone purchase to buy tons of singular standalone accessories that fall apart really quickly. Apple cabling sucks so bad. Hold on, I've got some of them here on my desk. So, we've got like the SD card reader, and this is a was this a $40 adapter or a $30 dongle? I can only use it with an iPhone because, if I were to get an iPad now, it wouldn't use the Lightning connector. This is my second one, by the way. I don't use these things very often, but my first one failed, and that was one of the reasons why I was having so many problems with my iPhone XS. And then, for iPhones, I would not recommend getting the camera kit, which is just the simple USB adapter. This is the $30 dongle. Don't get this one because your iPhone can't power anything through the USB, through the Lightning jack. So if you connect a USB flash drive to this, the iPhone is going to say, well, I can't power it. You need something else. So what you need to do is get the $40 dongle so that you can plug a Lightning charger into the dongle just so you can power a USB flash drive. And I mean, like, it goes on and on and on. The headphone, this is my fourth or fifth headphone adapter because they're easy to lose. And again, the shielding on this cable is such crap. So I know Apple tries to make some kind of argument that like, oh, well, our cables fall apart more easily so that they'll break down in landfills better. And I want to say, if your cables didn't fall apart so easily, we wouldn't need to replace them so often. That to me seems like it would be a better fit for the environment where this stuff isn't dying as quickly. It's built to last better. So I'm torn on where I stand with the EU. The fact that there are still some holdouts and there are still some companies that were facing, different competing standards on these types of products. I lean towards supporting an initiative just to say, hey, it's 2020, USB-C has won. Make stuff USB-C or pay some kind of penalty. If you want to license all of this garbage, like this is what is that? 40, 60, 100. So this is $120 worth of iPhone dongles. And it still doesn't compete. Do I have it on my desk? I usually have it within arm's reach. Oh, it's behind me. Technically within arm's reach. This is a $40 laptop hub. A $40 laptop hub has HDMI output, dual USB input, has a charge port so you can power whatever it is that you're connecting, a card reader, and Ethernet. And this works with a good chunk of Android phones. So for $40 on USB-C, you get this. For $110, $120 on Lightning connectors, you get all of this, and it's not nearly as functional as just a basic laptop dock. So I get why Apple does it. I've spent $120 on stupid dongles, actually more considering the number of headphone dongles that I've had to replace. Apple has a vested interest in selling these licensed connectors because it's a proprietary connector. You want something that works with the iPhone? It's going to work poorly because the iPhone tops out at USB 2 data rates for that Lightning connector. But you gotta do business through Apple this way, and this is all junk. I mean, like it's gathering dust on my desk because I don't use my iPhone nearly as often as I use an Android device. And when I do go to use some of these things, they've already broken down or they've stopped working. If I keep them in a laptop bag, I've got to like gingerly baby them. It's galling. I mean, just for that reason alone, I want to say, make the iPhone USB-C like you made the iPad USB-C. You can still sell a ton of dongles. It's not like dongles go away because MacBooks and iPads still have a bunch of USB dongles. But we would have a clear, consistent connection standard across all devices. So this does seem punitively targeted at Apple if the EU is making this play. But I don't think there would be any discussion or as much support for this type of play against Apple if Lightning weren't such a mess. The Lightning connector is such a crap connector. And the accessories that we get for the Lightning connector are such crap accessories. I can't. It's so frustrating. This is what we're stuck with. Supposedly the iPhone is like the most powerful phone ever, but you can't even like read 4K video off of a memory card. Is it's USB 2 Pro. It's totally pro. But I also know I have a few people here in my chat that are more conservative leaning than I am. It's just I don't know how else to sort of encourage change at this point. The popularity contest is going to keep Apple doing whatever is going to be most successful and most profitable for Apple. So, you know, that can't be adjusted or corrected without some other kind of outside influence. What I actually would kind of like to see, I mean, these things can be minorly effective, and it wouldn't be necessarily a too heavy a cost. I mean, an information campaign. You know, what are you throwing away from your phone? What garbage are you creating in the simple act of purchasing a phone? You get this phone, you pop it out, there's a plastic case. Well, let's throw that away. And oh, these cheap earbuds, I'm going to throw those away. Maybe some type of PSA, you know, to start this conversation off would at least lead towards a more informed consumer base that they also won't be wasting money. You know, I think that's also the last frustrating aspect of this is that's a waste. $120 worth of iPhone dongles, and that's not all of them. That's just what I have here on my desk. I've got other adapters and third-party connectors and a whole bunch of other crap, and none of it really works as well as USB-C. So when I make a video about that, I get a bunch of people just saying I'm a hater, but no one ever really contests the results. Let me show you transferring a file on Lightning. Oh, well, I just use AirDrop. Yeah, well, I've got a really awesome NOS. And if I try and transfer to my NOS, the iPhone is still the worst solution for doing that type of file transferring. Wireless is not the solution if you do a bunch of things on your phone. So it's a sticky situation. But if companies aren't going to do it themselves, I don't think there's any other resource. You can't tell Apple consumers not to buy the phones. It's unfortunately, if you're in iOS and you're stuck in that ecosystem, they're still going to keep buying iOS products. But if there's not some other leverage that we can execute to encourage business to be done in a way that's more responsible and better for the consumer, and also just cheaper, then I don't know what else to do. It's like you just give up and just say, okay, well, Apple makes a ton of e-waste. It's cool. It's popular though, and they're successful. So I guess that's what we'll just have to live with, is way more landfill garbage, because Apple wants you to buy more things more frequently than you should need to, and they don't want their things to work well with their competitors. That seems unsustainable. So I'm very frustrated. Mm-hmm. So Sam, that's when you know you have the good argument. If they just attack personally, then you got them. But the thing is, it's like I don't think people. It's like I've got to continuously vet my credentials. When I really started working in the tech space, and this was a while back, I was an Apple product specialist for Department of Energy facilities in New Mexico. There was a contractor. I used to work on their order fulfillment team. I had to do the Apple certification process. Excuse me. We were selling X-Serves and G5s and dual core dual sockets. And I mean, it was just it was an incredible time to be an Apple fan. Just beautiful hardware and uncompromising power and workstations that, while expensive, I mean, like, you couldn't put an HP together in the same way that you could make these like 4-core dual socket Power Macs. And I just like, I wish we could get back to some of that style of Apple with the consumer focus. I'm fairly positive on the Mac Pro. The new Mac Pro looks like a beautifully designed, easy to upgrade, easy to repair, to maintenance type of machine. It looks like an Apple that's terrified of right to repair legislation, forcing them to post their repair and product guides. So they're actually encouraged to make a machine that isn't so stupidly locked down. But their bread and butter is iPads and iPhones, iOS and iPadOS. That's where they're making a ton more of their money, and that's the stuff that's still locked up, super difficult to maintenance, and they have the worst policies. Like, hey, you want to replace your screen? Well, it doesn't have our security software, even though it's an Apple display. Well, we're going to brick your phone. You know, like, the most punitive actions happen with iPhones and iPads. You want to use an iPhone? Well, you got to use these stupid dongles. Yeah, everyone else is using USB-C, but you're stuck here. Until we put pressure on Apple in that regard, they're not going to change their behavior. So it's almost like I want to say, like, every Lightning connector has to pay a proprietary tax. You want a proprietary standard that doesn't work with anything else on the market, not even your own products. Lightning connectors don't work with MacBooks. Lightning connectors don't work with the Mac Pro. Lightning connectors don't work with the iPad anymore. Well, then we need to charge you a 300% tax. Go license the Lightning connector, but then we're going to use all of that money to fund recycling centers around the city. Like, there's an amazing recycling center just north of me. You drive up, you drop off all of your toxic chemicals and e-waste and busted TVs, and you drive off. And that's what we pay for. Here in California, we pay stupid high taxes at point of sale. That's what that money should be going towards, and some of it does. So if Apple wants to play that game, then I feel like that should be the appropriate response to it. From Ron, your average consumer was having problems with AirDrop last night. It didn't want to work right. Now, to be fair, I have a ton of problems with iOS over USB. If I have more than like a gigabyte of data to transfer in photos and videos, then I'm kind of proper stuck. The best solution I found is transferring it to a memory card over USB 2 speeds, and it takes forever because I'm not in a full AirDrop compatible environment. If you try and transfer a video off of the iPhone, it compresses it. So you see the little preparing. It's preparing the video to be sent over Wi-Fi. What it's doing is it's running like a 4-to-1 compression, and it looks awful. It looks so bad when you transfer that way. But I can't just natively, directly load that video directly onto my NOS. It's got to go through the prep phase first. And it's a pain point to say, well, what you should be doing is using a Mac. And if you bought a MacBook or a Mac Pro or an iMac, well, then your AirDrop would work properly. No, my NOS is awesome. It's so frustrating. Anyway, Mr. Pulp Fiction, the American way of life. People are spending money they don't have on things they don't need. To finish your quote, to impress people they don't like. From Ronio266, only if Apple was more open. I'd even be fine with Apple being as closed as they are, but at least give us a better interoperability. I'm amazed I almost got that word out on the first try. From Matt Tyler, this e-waste is why I'm happy we have started taking part in that. I mentioned in my previous comment. I feel like if we need to make our governments do this, the solution's going to be clumsy. Laws are these giant broadswords, and consumer behavior often needs to be tackled with like a scalpel-like precision. But it's also the last tool, the last point of leverage that we have to properly enact the change that we want to see. So I do have one just a really brief news piece here. Well, let me get the link. Again, talking about standards and open, interoperable, sort of free flow of information. One I think of the shining highlights of the last couple of years has been the world of podcasting. We've seen the difficulties in distributing content on social media, on Facebook. We see the direct impact of how brutal the algorithmic sorting on YouTube can be. One of the few areas of sort of unmanipulated or unmolested content distribution is podcasting. So this story came by way of Engadget. Let me get this queued up here. No, sorry about that. I also muted my mic there. Okay. Luminary cuts the price of its premium podcast plan to $5 a month. The troubled service has been around for less than a year. This is written up by Chris Holt at Engadget. And from the article, less than 12 months after its rocky debut, the premium podcast service Luminary has lowered its subscription fee. It's down to $5 a month from $8 a month, while the company added a $35 annual plan. The premium offering includes access to exclusive ad-free podcasts from folks including Trevor Noah, Conan O'Brien, Hannibal Buress, and Lena Dunham. You can also use Luminary's app as a regular podcast player for shows from elsewhere, which the company describes as the free version of its service. Now, this was a really slimy way to build the free side of their service, because while Luminary was acting as a podcast distribution platform, in the same way like Spotify, Apple, Google, everyone wants to have their podcast app be the single point of access for people to find shows and subscribe to shows. And then you get all that data. What are they listening to? Ooh, I think we can sell that data off and all those trends. Luminary took it one step further. So they signed on a bunch of podcasts. Just you open the app and you'd see all these podcasts and look how amazing this is. I can get the Joe Rogan show. Oh, great. So, I'll subscribe to Trevor Noah's show and I'm paying the $5 a month. And I also have all this other content that we can tack on for free. But they didn't really clear any of that content to be on a freemium premium style service. And when those shows would get linked and included in the Luminary app, they would strip all of the links and metadata. So let's say you run a podcast and it's ad supported, and you've got like a promo code. Hey, I know like on the audio stream, I have a link for Audible. If you want to sign up for Audible, it supports the show. I try not to push it too hard, just outside of the front bumper for the audio version of the podcast. But if I were to include that link in my show notes, it would strip out the link. So either you've got to like copy and paste from the app, which you can't really do, or you've got to like remember to type in manually the promo code so that your favorite podcast host actually gets the advertising hit that they're supposed to. And stuff like that was really scummy. I really hope we never land on a dominant Netflix for podcasting. I know Apple's podcasting app is probably one of the most dominant forces in the industry, but there's so much available competition. I use Podcast Republic. That's my favorite podcasting app. I'm sure other people in the chat can share other podcasting apps that they enjoy too. But so long as the core service of podcasting is an open type of platform, you set up an RSS feed and then you upload an audio file, and anyone who subscribes can just download those audio files and consume your show free of any other interaction or another service inserting themselves between you and the listener. Then podcasting will remain healthy. As soon as there's one sort of overly dominant player that can dictate how podcasting should function, I think that'll be really bad for the industry. I think it's been bad for streaming video. We haven't seen a solitary audio solution like YouTube. And I think because of the free and open nature of podcasting, no one company can force users to do business with them just like that. You know, no one can dictate the future of audio streaming, because audio is pretty easy to send over the internet, and you can't contain that type of distribution. I really hope we never get to that point. It's entirely likely that in some future, if there's only like one or two major players in the mobile space, for example, that we could find a more locked up version of audio distribution. But I think there's always going to be a community of services that at least keep outlets like Luminary from interrupting the process. I bring this up not because like, oh, hey, you can go get a Luminary subscription, $5 a month. I'm actually bringing this up to point out, I hope Luminary crashes and burns. I do not think their mission is the mission we should be supporting. I don't think, not that paywalling content isn't an appropriate solution for a podcaster to monetize their stream. It's that the gatekeeper acted in bad faith. And the gatekeeper at Luminary impacted other podcasts and tried to reduce their profitability to enhance their own. And that's garbage. So I hope they die. I hope they die in a fire, a metaphorical fire of people not subscribing to their service, is what I'm trying to say. Oh yeah, here we go. From Sam 20 Miles, I use Podcast Addict. I remember liking Podcast Addict. There was just like one little setting in Podcast Republic when I started using it years ago. And just like Novo Launcher, I'm a creature of habit. So because I started using Podcast Republic, I'm good. I don't experiment too much with my podcasting. From Matt Tyler, I'll start a podcasting website free to creators, promote it on glowing rectangles, and we can get rich from ad revenue. Mwahahaha. From Blue Malicious, I'm lazy. I just use the Google Podcast app, but it's not very feature rich. Looking for recommendations. Sentinel 909. Also, honestly, I would start with Podcast Addict. I like Podcast Republic, but I think the interface on Addict is actually probably a little sleeker today. But I think either of those would be solid options if you're on Android. I'm not sure about Apple solutions. Honestly, the podcast service I use the most on my iPhone is Spotify. Now that I really think about it, like I just log in and I collect my shows there. It's probably not as the library of Spotify sourced podcasts probably isn't as rich as just Apple podcasts, but I think that's the one I end up just using out of familiarity and convenience. Oh, Fat Produce. I still have Pocket Casts as my main podcast consumption app. That could be a solid solution too. And Boeing Bites. I just Google podcasts, to be honest. Oh, Rosted Stitcher. Stitcher. What was is it Player? There was like something FM. I think I submitted my podcast to them. I'm pretty sure I'm on Stitcher. But yeah, there are a couple of those other little services too that might not be terrible to check out. And Boeing Bite just says hello to the chat. So everyone say hey to Boeing Bite. All right. News block took a little bit longer than I was anticipating, but I got all ranty about e-waste and funnily how that sort of goes hand in hand with Apple. So not a great look for me, but you guys know I'm going to do stuff like that. Let me take another drink of water. We've got to plug the subreddit here real quick. So every podcast, we were just talking about podcasts, every podcast has a subreddit. And some subreddits are really engaged in sharing news articles, like the Tech News Daily. You know, like their subreddits are super engaged for upvoting the stories that are going to be on their daily news broadcasts. Some subreddits are just like, hey, these people are amazing and we think they're super cool, and they're a bit more sort of fan servicey. My podcast has a subreddit too, but for all of my complaining about distribution like YouTube and Facebook, I really wanted my subreddit to be a part of the solution for spreading the word on cool content. Your favorite content creators work their buns off to make engaging content, to make stuff that they hope people will enjoy. No one goes into producing a YouTube video going, man, I'm really glad this is hot garbage and I hope no one watches it. You know, like homegrown content is a brutal sphere to work in and is now become one of the most critical parts of the internet. You know, if your content isn't amazingly produced and it doesn't look like you're part of an ad agency for the gadget that you're reviewing, well, I'm not going to watch this. As opposed to just appreciating the time and the effort and the energy that went into sharing some thoughts on a gadget that we'd all really want to talk about. So I created a subreddit that I hope can be a tool to help that situation. If you go to reddit.com/r/glowing rectangles, you can find a whole community of people sharing content from creators that deserve more attention. It's not just new up-and-coming YouTubers that haven't reached their monetization. For me, that's a super important audience to help support, or a super important community to help support as an audience member. But also just channels that, as YouTube has changed how they value metrics and how they promote different types of content, there are a lot of creators out there that don't get the views that they really deserve. And again, I hope that we can be part of the change on that. The subreddit's never going to be one of those front page, super huge organizations or communities, but I really hope over time it'll grow to be a feeder. If something's popular on glowing rectangles, it's more likely it'll get picked up by a larger subreddit, and that's a huge boon to any content creator, small or large, getting their content in front of more eyeballs and the correct communities for sharing that content. So I want to share, these are the top stories on our glowing rectangles, as voted by the community. Let me go into screen share here. And A number one with a bullet. This is coming by way of Ryan Thomas with 41,000 subscribers. Don't buy flagships. This is a great video shared by Sentinel 909. I don't know, is Sentinel still in the live chat? LFA reviews. My content is both cage-free and cruelty-free, but let me tell you, is packed full of tasty, delicious GMOs. I'm kidding, Jeff. You're totally not genetically modified. That was a terrible thing to make a joke about. Anyway. Yeah, Sentinel 909, I'm pretty sure he was in the live chat, shared this on Glowing Rectangles. You took the top spot with, I would say this was one of the best videos I watched of the last week. Again, it's just going hand in hand with this community finding great content and genuinely like upvoting stuff that it's not just popular, it's really well produced and well informed. This is something that I've wholly been trying to back. LFA reviews. I used that same title for my Pixel 3a XL review. Ryan's channel here is solid, but this was a timely video coming at the beginning of the new year, a fresh perspective, a fresh approach to looking at this type of content, and it's a great message. So many of my family and friends have stopped shopping the ultra premium tier of smartphones. It's getting kind of silly, and you're looking at $40 or $50 a month for a phone lease for 30 months. Or spend like $300 and get a totally decent daily driver phone just to tackle all of your communications basics well. You know, and that's why I was so excited by phones like the Pixel 3a, but so many phones fit that bill. Sony XAs, Moto G series, 3-week-old LG flagships you can usually find for super dirt cheap. Poor LG. That kind of conversation really needs more of a bump. Marketing and popularity are going to continue driving people purchasing phones that they probably don't need. I shared that story. Again, I look at my brother and my sister, my mom and my dad. Like, I think the most expensive phone in my immediate family, you know, my siblings and my parents, is my mom's OnePlus 6T. Like that was the premium purchase out of all of the phones that they've purchased. But then I've got cousins that have no need for $1,400 iPhones, but you know, they didn't want to be seen getting the cheap iPhone. So they needed to buy the really expensive premium professional iPhone, even though they're not really doing anything with that phone that warrants anywhere near that kind of cost. So big, huge, awesome. So excited to have that type of video at the top of Glowing Rectangles and completely validating why I'm so excited about the Glowing Rectangles community. The number 2 is some jerk face in a hat. Can I get some hashtag punchable faces in the live chat, please? JPat5223 on Mixer. This would be the right time to make fun of me, as you have now started following my Mixer channel. Hashtag 2020 hearing, a year-long tech project to protect your hearing from SomeGadgetGuy hit the number 2 spot on Glowing Rectangles. It's my subreddit, but I'm very rarely at the top of my own subreddit, so I feel like the community has let us down with some punchable face guy being in the top 3. But Fat Produce also kind enough to share hashtag 2020 hearing. Boang Bite, hashtag some jerk face with hat guy. That's a pretty good one. It could be longer though. Boang Bite. That hashtag could be longer. But moving into the number 3 spot, oh baby, I am irrationally excited for this product in the number 3 spot. While I am on this podcast, I'm actually getting the FedEx notifications for mine to be delivered today, and that is the Next Dock 2. So a video coming by way of Steve Litchfield. He got his in the first batch. So this was a Kickstarter project. The Next Dock is a laptop shell. It's a screen and a keyboard and a touchpad and USB ports and jacks and chargers, but it's a completely standalone, empty shell. It's just a screen, keyboard, touchpad, and battery. And what you do, as you can see in the thumbnail here, is you connect your phone to it, and the phone becomes the brain of the laptop experience. I would say since the Snapdragon 835, we have been overbuying for compute power on our mobile devices. We really haven't been using as much horsepower as we've actually got in these tiny little computers. Case in point, like I just did Android 10 on the Xperia 5, and I've started doing things like compression testing, right? So you take 1,000 MP3 files, that's 3 gigabytes of data, and you squish it into one little file that you can move more easily. The Xperia 5, which is not the top of the pack speed demon phone for a Snapdragon 855, was 10% slower than my 8th gen Core i7 laptop. 10% separates a full robust Windows PC, which originally retailed for like $1,200. You can get that MateBook for like $1,000 now, from an $800 phone. And your $800 phone has LTE built in and gets better battery life than that $1,000 laptop. So Steve takes a first look at the Next Dock 2. I'm going to be getting my Next Dock 2 either today or tomorrow, and I'm going to be really excited to start putting it through its paces. I feel like this is a beautiful disruption point for smartphones, is a $200 dock and a $500 smartphone can roughly outperform a lot of $1,000 consumer laptops, and also do things like give you LTE data, where a lot of those, like $1,000 Surface isn't going to have LTE built in. So I'm ridiculously excited about this product. And true to form, glowing rectangles. This was the number 3 most upvoted story, most upvoted link on the subreddit. So LFA reviews, #some do you even care about your hearing guy? I love it. See, I'm going to have to make that my backup hashtag to 2020 hearing, because again, it could be longer, but not by much. Boeing Bite, it reminds me of the ye old Motorola Atrix. I feel Motorola missed a huge opportunity by not doing this with Moto mods. Imagine just like snapping the phone into the front of your keyboard and then it just powers the whole laptop. Could have been amazing, but I'd rather use USB-C as a non-proprietary interface to do the same thing. Like I said, I'm irrationally anxious and excited to play with something like this, because our phones are so stupid powerful today. And I just imagine you've got you that would be a reason to spend a little bit more. You go get like a $500 OnePlus, like a OnePlus 7T, which now supports HDMI output, and you go and get a $200 laptop dock, $700. Well, actually, it would be closer to $800, but it would be competing. A OnePlus 7T is going to compete really well against $1,000 Windows machines. And actually, it didn't make the top 5, but Gary Explains just put out a video using the Surface X. So that's using Windows on ARM. So it's a Qualcomm processor, not an Intel processor in that Surface. And a lot of his experiences with that machine are mirroring what I'm talking about with phones. I just feel like we could cut one whole operating system out of the equation for a lot of consumers out there. Obviously, if you have proprietary software, you're gonna have to play with Windows still. I'm still using Windows for a lot of what I do on computers, but a lot of folks out there, someone who might be shopping a Chromebook or a MacBook Air or some other type of device, your phone could probably get the gig done, and in a way that you might not notice any deficit in how you get your work done. That to me is really exciting. I think we're right on the edge. We're getting so close. We just need a few more really good accessories. And then your $200 laptop dock, every time you get a new phone, that laptop gets more powerful. I'll connect this next dock to a Snapdragon 845, and then this year we're going to get Snapdragon 865s. You know, like that 2-year window would be a huge laptop upgrade just from you buying a new phone. To me, it's magic. Anyway, also go check out Gary Explains video. He has a pretty good showcase just as a first impressions of what Windows on ARM is looking like, and I'm telling you, it's indistinguishable. We're getting so close. I think Intel and AMD have a huge fight on their hands with the processors that go in our phones. Crazy exciting. Okay. Vazicos 8. Travis McPee also made a video. The iPhone 12 will be faster than a laptop. So what? You can't do anything with iOS. I feel like, iPad OS. Yeah. If the iPhone had USB-C, then I think I would be just as excited for the next generation Apple processor, because they're beastly powerful, but you can't do anything with that power. Apple doesn't give you access to that power. A lot of those improvements go into things like the camera app. Great. You get better computational photography in the moment. No one's disputing the auto mode on the iPhone is brutally competitive. But that horsepower doesn't deliver for video rendering. It doesn't deliver for stabilization. It doesn't deliver for any of the other third-party apps that you might use. But if it had USB-C, maybe I could connect HDMI output and I could run an iOS laptop. That would be really, really cool. So anyway, that was a very long-winded examination. I just got so excited about the next dock because mine's coming. Steve, number 3, next dock, first look, super cool. Definitely check out that video. But in general, reddit.com/r/glowing rectangles. Every week we add a few new subscribers, a few more members. We need upvotes. We need comments. We need that interaction. The more popular the little subreddit gets and the more popular individual videos on the subreddit gets, the better we're going to be able to feed these videos to larger subreddits and more popular outlets. But I make this plea every week. If you've not checked out the subreddit, I guarantee you will find a content creator you've never seen before, probably talking about a product that fewer larger publications are spending time on, but you're going to like what they have to say. You're going to like that content. It's going to be cool stuff. I promise you, if you've not been to Glowing Rectangles, you'll find something new and you'll find something that you'll want to subscribe to. But better than YouTube, after you subscribe to it, you'll still find their stuff on Glowing Rectangles before you'll see it in your YouTube feed, because YouTube gets in the way of your subscription feed. So definitely check it out. From Vazicos 8, next dock is Apple's nightmare. Actually, I think next dock has the potential, not the next dock specifically, but in general, a laptop dock should be every manufacturer's nightmare. And you look at a company like Lenovo, still one of the top, Lenovo, HP, Dell, top 3 Windows manufacturers. Each one of those, I don't know that any manufacturer in Windows space has topped 30% in a while. Like for a while there, it was like Lenovo was 40% of the Windows market. But Lenovo, HP, Dell, if you could go to someone and say like, hey, what do you do on your laptop? You surf the web, you do a little light, document work in Microsoft or in Google Docs. You play a couple casual games, but nothing too serious. Why buy a laptop? Like I think, on both sides of this, Apple's not going to be hurt too much because Apple's fan base is so loyal to you need to have 4 different operating systems that all work together. But the Windows space is going to be prime for some disruption there. And I think that's one of the best arguments. Why do you need a $700 to $1,000 laptop if most of the stuff that you do is easily done on your phone? It's where Chromebooks had a great argument, but we're also going to be talking about one of the things that I think is going to be interesting for Chromebooks coming up soon too. So shifting back into just a couple quick gadget stories, just two articles on hardware that I wanted to bring up here. hold on one second. I'm gonna get the link here for the live chat, and then I'm gonna screen share the official. This is from the Chromium blog. Let me drop that here, and let's screen share there. Okay. Chromium blog, news and developments from the open source browser project. Moving forward from Chrome apps, the web platform has made substantial progress since the launch of Chrome apps in 2013. As community members, we continue to work with other browsers and invest to bring rich capabilities to the platform as seen in the announcements made at the Chrome Developer Summit last November. The progress of modern browsers puts the web in a good position to answer the vast majority of use cases. Evident in the success of companies like Figma and our own products like Google Earth, we are confident that the web can deliver first-class experiences on an open platform. With this continued progress, we are expanding upon our earlier announcement and will begin phasing out support for Chrome apps across all operating systems as follows. And they have a month-by-month breakdown from 2020, where in March, the Chrome Web Store will stop accepting new Chrome apps, to June of 2022, where the final end support for Chrome apps on all Chrome OS for all customers. So you're getting a Chromebook. No one was really using Chrome apps. I mean, like, I feel like Chrome OS was the main bastion of installing a program into Chrome as a browser to have it work with that relationship. But one of the things that I've enjoyed the most on my Pixelbook has been support for Android apps and for Linux programs, like full Linux desktop style programs running on my Pixelbook Go. That's a great combination. So Chrome as a browser and web services that run in the browser are perfectly competent, perfectly capable of handling the bulk of my sort of on-the-go usage. And then for those times I need something a bit more robust, I haven't bothered looking at any of the Chrome apps. I've only gone to Linux. So, you know, like if I want to edit a video, edit a photo on my Pixelbook, I've got GIMP. I like using GIMP. It's a good photo editor. I also like showing off that my Pixelbook Go, my main browser is Firefox, because I like using Firefox. So even though it's Chrome OS, I have a little penguin icon, and I click on the penguin icon, and in that folder is Firefox, and I load up Firefox, and I go to town on Firefox. So just something to be, you know, have your eyes peeled for. If you're using Chrome on Windows, support for that's going to end sooner. That's going to be in 2021. But then also Chrome for Education. I wonder if there are going to be any specific education apps that were built for Chrome OS that can't be easily migrated into a standalone program or into some other type of, sort of web service instead of using it as a Chrome app. So Chrome apps going away. I don't know. Was anyone using something like that? I've been talking up Android apps as the correct through line, the correct solution for a lot of our computing platforms, but I don't know. I mean, I literally went from the very first Acer Chromebook to the Pixelbook Go with almost no Chrome OS activity in between. Yeah, Mr. Pulp Fiction, on Samsung's Android tablets, you can install Linux with LibreOffice and some other stuff. Samsung's DeX is going to end support for Linux, though. So I don't know how that's going to affect some of their other products. I think their Chrome OS stuff is obviously going to continue supporting Linux because Chrome OS has a pretty good build-in for using Debian Linux. But like I said, I'll be excuse me. I'll be curious to see if that affects any of the other development out there. Fat Produce, does Chrome Remote Desktop count as a Chrome app? That's a very good question. I'll look into that. I don't think it will be. I think it's a core component of the Chrome browser, not a... I honestly don't know because I haven't tried doing it in a while. I'm going to see if if something like that is going to be an issue. From Matt Tyler, would a Chrome Windows, I'm not entirely sure what you're asking. Oh, would a Chrome OS Windows hybrid work? So from what little I've seen and people doing things like gutting the software on old Chromebooks, I think some of them do have support for installing Windows. But it seems that most people, once they're sort of done with Chrome OS, just move to some kind of Linux distro instead. Depending on the Chromebook, it can be a little tricky to enable that ability to reflash an OS, but Linux seems to be the more standard upgrade path. Again, because also Chromebooks have sort of a ticking clock. Like, I think you can only really count on 5 to 6 years of software support from Google, and then they just pull the plug. So it's not, is the hardware still viable? It's, 5 years, you're done. And so then at that point, I think a lot of people look, well, I've already enabled Linux support. I might as well just move to Linux, because the laptop is still, the hardware is still usable. So we can make that shift. Mr. Pulp Fiction, what's used most at U.S. schools, iPads or Chromebooks? I honestly don't know. I know for LAUSD, they keep pushing the Apple initiative. I think iPads are more widely used than Chrome OS. I could be completely wrong, and I might not be drawing good data from, say, school districts in more economically challenged regions of Los Angeles. But from what I've seen, I think iOS has a lead in LA. But I don't know. I would hope moving forward in like the future of teaching computing as a skill set, that students have access to every operating system at some point in their educational careers. I think you are better equipped to handle the realities of modern computing life if you're at least aware of the differences between Mac OS, Windows, Android, Chrome. There's a lot. Linux. I mean, I think it's tricky to just like, oh, well, I learned how to do everything on an iPad, and so I've just been taught I should only buy iPads for my future computer purchases. Oh, Matt Tyler, I meant, would a Chrome OS and a Windows team-up operating system, the best of Chrome support and the best of Windows merged into one OS? I think I actually just Google and Microsoft, I don't think would ever work together on an initiative like that. The closest we'll see is Microsoft using Android for a mobile device, but Microsoft really wants Windows on ARM to be a thing. Again, the Surface X, not the Duo, the Neo, the Surface Neo. Microsoft has designs on a leaner operating system that's more app focused. I don't think, and also I think Google wants to maintain their sort of, their position in the space, chipping away at some of the gaps in Microsoft's lineup. So I don't think they'd work together on something like that. Let me see. Let me get this out of the way here. And one other. So this was one last little story, and then we can start talking about some LG. Because I've been very happy this weekend with my V50. But quick story out of TechCrunch. Xiaomi spins off Poco as an independent company. And we were just talking about phones, lower cost devices, getting a great bang for buck. In 2018, that idea was synonymous with the brand Poco, becoming hugely popular in India. A $300 smartphone that had the same processor, not the same performance and not the same display and amenities, but it had the same processor as a flagship device. In 2020, Xiaomi is going to be spinning this off as its own standalone manufacturer, a little like Oppo versus OnePlus. But again, catering and focusing on trying to extract the biggest bang for buck that you can. And I hope they continue with how cheap can we make the most powerful chipset in the market. So I'll be curious to see how well this exercise is implemented. Building a new brand right now is going to be kind of tricky. There's a lot of competition in the Poco space now. The TechCrunch article actually does a pretty good job breaking down what some of the other internal competition from Xiaomi looks like, in addition to the BBK brands. And I wouldn't discount in Eastern markets especially. I wouldn't discount Huawei, like a Huawei or Honor, competing in regions where Google isn't as dominant a platform for those consumers. But again, seeing more focus on the upper entry level, lower mid range. You know, a $300 phone is right on that tier between a low end mid range device and a high end entry level device. I would love to see more competition in that space, especially if Xiaomi could then use the Poco label as a way to better directly sell in the United States. I'd love to see Poco show up on B&H as an unlocked option. Could you imagine that? I mean, like, let's give them a price bump. Price bump for Snapdragon 865, $350. And you go to B&H and you just buy it unlocked. That could be epic. Like, that could be an amazing competition point. I really wish Xiaomi would take North America a bit more seriously. I would love to see that competition here in the United States. And Rouge Sunshine, exactly. Poco would be Xiaomi's attempt at building a OnePlus of their own. Just their skin is too heavy for that sort of thing. LFA review, Spec Chasers really love that Poco phone. I thought it was decent for the 3 hours I had one. I mean, I only got to hold one. It wasn't TK. Was it Josh? Literally, like, the Poco came out and I held it and went, okay, yeah, it's a phone. And I gave it back. And then I can't remember. We were at some mixer. That was my only experience with the Poco phone. I really wanted to play around with it a bit more. But the thing about, you know, like, the software on it, I'm not too, like, again, we'd be looking at compromises. If Poco could launch a premium chipset device sub $400, clear shot against OnePlus devices that are trying to move a bit more upscale, launch it unlocked here in the United States, support for T-Mobile and AT&T, I don't think anyone's really going to care about a skin that's a little more garish or a launcher that's a bit more iPhone-y. The people who do care about that kind of stuff are going to slap a third-party launcher on it anyway, or potentially root it and ROM it. General consumers just don't seem to care that much. My wife's LG G7, I'm shocked to see that she doesn't use an app drawer. I don't know when this happened. That's not how I set up her G7, but it just pages through apps like an iPhone. To me, that's the worst, but she seems fine with it. Apps are installed at the tail end of her home pages. There's no alphabetizing or organizing. It's just a mess of apps. And that makes me sad. But that's what regular people do with their phones. So that's a thing. Oh, from Vazikos, I feel sorry for American market not having Xiaomi in their lives. I just feel, I mean, again, I talk this up a lot. I just would like to see more competition, especially mentioning the Sentinel 909. We have the Pixel 3a. That's the competition point right now. I really want more consumers to know that if they needed to buy a $400 phone, it would probably feel indistinguishable from a $1,000 phone for most of what they need to do. Very little of the experience is going to be impacted at less than half the price. And a DT Anil, it's a good idea, more competition. I personally will be satisfied with a Pixel running a 700 series SoC than a very clumsily skinned high-spec only device. The Sentinel 909. My girlfriend doesn't use an app drawer. It drives me crazy. Fat Produce. Marie's home screen setup sounds like it would give me hashtag sweaty palms. And JMX Warrior. No app drawer. That would drive me crazy. I'm going to tell her. Hey, babe, Marie, you made the podcast. Let's fix your G7. And what about the new Motorola Hyper? Oh, I really want to get my hands on that Moto. I've been super positive. I found, again, in like a box that I didn't even know I had. I have a couple other older Moto devices. I mean, I've always got my Moto X2 on the shelf over there, but like a Moto E series, a Moto G series, a Moto G4. What was the cheapest version of the Moto G4? So many good, solid, lower mid-range devices that have basically kept Motorola alive in the United States after the whole Google acquisition fallout. They're good. They're really good. This last generation Moto G, I mean, it would feel indistinguishable from a premium phone outside of just slightly poorer camera performance. And like, it's a $350 phone. I mean, that kind of positioning, that kind of pricing is so exciting to me. So it's so exciting that I feel now is the time, as we get to the end of this podcast, now is the time to talk about $1,000 phone. So for all the people that have bagged on LG, because according to the tech press, biggest failure 2019, did nothing worth talking about, no excitement. It's like a Cameron from Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Didn't do anything fun today. LG pushed out Android 10 for the V50. So $1,000 phone, right? We're talking premium devices, but so far, no one's been able to point to a less expensive device that does as much as the V50 and has 5G radio support today. So I feel like this was a unique phone in 2019 for those folks who wanted to be a bit ahead of the curve, still wanted, like the top best headphone jack on a device, like audiophile grade headphone jack, and then some really great, top of the line premium content creation features in a very powerful device. This was the diesel truck of phones for 2019. Not always the sleekest or the snappiest, but like capable of some of the best heavy lifting and topping a lot of my my benchmarks for things like video rendering, stabilization, RAR compression, RAR. And 2019 was a solid year for LG software support. LG missed the Android 10 rollout. Samsung beat them by a month. So Samsung devices got Android 10 in December. But I am giving LG a little bit of a grade on a curve, because the V50, in most markets, not here in the United States, unfortunately, not only is this the Android 10 update, but this is also the new UX update, which we saw first on the LG G8X. And it also represents a firmware update for the international V50 for the dual screen case. So, for everyone that's been kind of complaining, I feel like LG is making the moves that we wanted to see circa 2017. It's just LG is a giant corporation and it's tough to steer a ship that large. But everyone is saying, well, we want more cost competitive devices. The LG G8X is a $700 phone with dual screens. It's $250 cheaper than a Note 10 for the same specs. We want to see better software updates, and 2019 was a good year. Not they're not overnight OnePlus, but we're also seeing a ton of custom software. So just like Samsung, we should expect that those updates are going to take longer. So what I want to do right here, I've got my V50, updated it to Android 10, and instead of trying to like show it off here, like on camera, fingers crossed, I hope this is going to work. I don't know that it will, but here, let me move this over here, and I got to unlock it. Sorry, 1 second. And this is terrible radio for those of you listening to the podcast as I fiddle around with stuff on my desk. And let me plug it in. Okay, let's see if this works. I'm going to try and screen share. This is what Android 10 on the LG V50 looks like. Just a quick UI tour. So I've gone to a one home screen page. I don't do multiple home screens anymore, so I want everything in vertical swipes. But just so you can see it, I've left the LG panel up on the side, and so you can flip to the side. And now, what I don't like is a lot of their design inspiration feels cribbed from Samsung's One UI. Everything has these cute rounded edges. It's very panel based. And you'll see when I swipe back and I pull down my notification shade, let me get rid of that DHL notification. You can see how it looks a lot like One UI. More so when you drop the settings in your notification shade, they all drop down to the bottom of the screen. Now, I like that as an ergonomic consideration. I do kind of wish, though, that this weren't so influenced by One UI, because when we do things like we go into the settings, we see there's just so much wasted space. It's one of my biggest pet peeves with One UI. It's so bubbly and it's so friendly. It's helping you so much that I think it actually gets in your way more. So like if I were to like shrink my screen down to the smallest size, it's still like kind of multiple swipes to get from the top of your settings to the end of your settings, where on a Pixel 4, your entire list of settings are all visible in on the screen at once. But also I got to give LG a lot of credit here. I feel like for as much praise as Samsung got with the Fold, LG actually still has, I think, the best multi-screen support. So I can't, unfortunately, show you the case plugged in. When you plug in an HDMI output to the V series, it disables the second display case. I was really hoping I could open the display case and screen share both screens, but it doesn't work that way. Once you connect it, though, brilliant automatic resizing tools. You can customize when I show you the display here, it's obviously not 16:9. This is the actual aspect ratio of the display. But when I connect it to a TV, it will automatically recognize the connection to a TV and shift to 16:9, which is really, really cool. So yeah, it's very much One UI, but LG's spin on it. And one of the things that's also encouraging is let's see if I can do this. I don't know if this will work, but if I come here and I open the camera, oh, it's not going to landscape it with this setup. No, it'll just keep it in portrait. But this is what my terrible messy desk looks like, and the camera app looks a little Samsung-ier too, but LG did not give up on all of those tasty pro modes that you can really use to produce high-quality video. You still have full access to the ultra-wide and full manual controls, 60 frame per second software-stabilized UHD video at an 80 megabit per second data rate. Just absolutely stunning footage. I'm very impressed. I've seen a couple complaints. There are still some animations that need polish. We're very much here with LG where we were with the Note 9 on Samsung. It's a totally new UI. It's top to bottom, completely reskinned. So I kind of feel like LG deserves the same kind of wait and see that we gave Samsung. It's like all these people, I still saw some frame drops and the animations could be smoother. Oh, it's a deal breaker. LG, they can't do anything right. But we saw the same garbage with Samsung on the Galaxy S10s. I can remember going through the gallery app on the S10e, and you'd scroll, and then the entire app would just freeze and all of your thumbnails would disappear and then have to get redrawn individually. And that was with video on the phone. Every device has some kind of UI kludginess that gets cleaned up over time. But it's just the spectator sport to go, No. LG couldn't magically leapfrog years of software development, so that's a deal breaker because LG. Aditya Anil, what a rare instance of Juan capturing vertical video. From Fat Produce, do you have access to digital well-being? I actually turned it off because I'm doing a test now to see. I've got it turned off right now. I'm doing a test now to see if battery life improves when you disable digital well-being. But yes, it has digital well-being. How does the battery setup page look? Let's take a look at the battery page for Andrew and battery. And so, yeah, it's pretty typical. Battery percentage on the status bar, the optimized charging feature. I'll highly recommend using the optimized charging. And again, the adaptive battery is also kind of a nice touch too. Limit battery. Oops. Sorry, I'm moving the phone around. Limit battery for apps you don't use often by limiting their activity in the background. Background restrictions. I don't really have anything there. Battery savers off because this is still at 80% charge. But, pretty normal stuff. And again, it looks a little Samsung-y, so it's good times. From Rue Sunshine, how has the battery life been? I can't really comment on using the phone as a daily driver. So I got the update installed Friday night. Most of Saturday, I was running all of my tests. Re-completing the video rendering test, the stabilization test, this new RAR compression test. I'm happy to say, with the exception of one app I use a lot, everything's gotten faster. The Geekbench score, minor bumps to both single and multi-core performance. Video rendering and KineMaster got faster. Stabilization got way faster if you stabilize with Google Photos. Android 9 was just a terrible performance hog for that kind of stuff. RAR compression got about a 15% boost, which again, we're talking laptop competitive performance now for a lot of heavy lifting. So the last thing I want to show off here. Aditya Anil, question is, will LG fine-tune the UI, as in not perfect it, but simplify it for the older generation of SoC for the G7, as this will probably be its final software update? Or will they just optimize this new UI for the G7 and roll it out? And that's kind of an unknown. As we're getting ready for the G9 launch, I'm not entirely confident that the G7 in all regions will get Android 10. Especially here in the United States, where the bigger stumbling block isn't necessarily LG software, but LG's relationship with carriers. And that's always going to be a tricky position. They're still the number 3 smartphone manufacturer in the United States, but their lead is getting eroded by phones like the OnePlus. And for good reason. OnePlus's community building activities and new carrier relationships have been phenomenal. But I'd also like to point out that the 5G phone from LG got Android 10 before the 5G phone from OnePlus. I feel like that's worth talking about. I think that's a success. The 5G phone from LG got Android 10 before a handful of Nokia Android One devices got Android 10. Software support is really hard. So LG, full operating system update, Android 10, full UX update, completely new user interface, kept all of their custom software, slide out dock, second screen display, updated the firmware to their dual screen, kept all of their camera modes. They didn't pull a Samsung and gut features to make it easier to use. Still the same quad DAC performance. So you've got basically a $400 media player, standalone media player built into your phone. And again, it's a 5G device. Show me a 5G device under $1,000 and I'll show you why you should buy that instead of the V50. But again, if you're comparing a 4G device that you can get for cheaper against a V50, that's not an oranges to oranges comparison. Remember how I was talking about the Next dock? I don't have my Next dock here. It's probably going to be delivered after we're done with this podcast. Now, I was planning, do I have it over here? I have an old Honor phone that has a dedicated desktop mode. So I was planning on doing a lot of my Next Doc 2 coverage with this Honor. Because, you plug it in and EMUI takes over and reskins a more desktop-like user interface. And I was thinking, I'll borrow a Samsung so we can show off decks. So we can show off, 2 different desktop modes. And then, you know what? I'll use the OnePlus because Android 10 has the beginnings of a desktop mode. It's really clumsy. It doesn't look very good. It doesn't resize properly. It's ugly, but you can at least see where Android is going with a native desktop mode. Well, while I was doing some of my screen capturing and performance testing and looking at this new One UI, I'm looking at the notification tray, and let's see if it pops up. Configure the physical keyboard. Wait a minute. Android system screen sharing mode. Tap to switch to desktop mode. Well, let's see what this looks like. Well, look at that. LG joining the rarefied team of Huawei and Samsung in cleaning up a multi-window user desktop mode. Let me just come down. It's not perfect, guys. This still needs a little work too. But this is so much better than Android's built-in desktop mode. This is actually usable. So here, this is what your app drawer looks like. Not great, right? This isn't really what we'd want to see. But again, this looks way better than what Android's dedicated version is. I don't know. Let's do something silly here. I've got my controller. Now, again, this is on a phone through HDMI output, screen sharing. I can still use the V50 as a phone. I can still run things from the V50 while it's powering a full computer interface. But let's play Dandara. A little window here. I can move that window around while the game loads. Let me full screen it. It's going to take just a second because this is actually kind of a meaty game, even though it's kind of a Metroidvania clone. Going to get through all the splash screens here. Dandara, start game. And I don't know how this is going to actually look on the stream because I'm using an Elgato with OBS, but it's playing like butter on my actual monitor here because I have a monitor set up to also mirror what's going on with my setup. But so it's just like a little gaming. Sure, let's get this. Let's minimize this, and then I like using Firefox, so let's pull up Firefox here. Get you out of the way. Boom! Oh, look at that. SomeGadgetGuy. What a great website full of all kinds of awesome information like, Android 10 updates for the Xperia 5 and, links for camera reviews and audio reviews and how to support the website. And we can kind of minimize that and have that as a separate window. But let me move that out of the way. So we've got the browser up. If I wanted to be streaming some video, I could also be playing Dandara in a separate window here. It's really hard to see on my monitor, and again, I don't know how well it's playing in the stream, but I'm very impressed with this layout. I don't know. I mean, again, we've got Dandara jumping around, but we might want to do something a bit more practical. So let's where do we have Power Director? So let's edit a little video while we've got multiple windows open. I could be looking at my browser while I'm looking up information for video rendering tests. Let's just edit this project real quick and kind of move this down, and we could render 4K video just like we would in a normal desktop operating environment. I'm so silly excited that LG actually took the reins on this type of improvement. A native desktop mode that's way more usable than what Google is currently supplying, and with full access to like all of your settings, your system, your support, your core services. Let's see if I open. I actually haven't tested this one out, so let me see if Excel formats properly, because I really need good Excel support. So we'll just move that right there. And I'm purposely keeping all of these things up. It might look like it's going to be more like the app layout, so I might want to use Excel through a browser. But let's look at my smartphone benchmarks. Give that just a second. Yeah, see, this doesn't format quite like I'd want it to. This looks more like the app. So some work that still needs to be done, but man, this is so much better, so much more usable than just Google's solution here. And then we just swipe. I don't have to go into developer settings. I just come back to desktop mode, tap that, flips all of that off, and I'm back to a phone interface if I want to screen share from that instead. That's huge. If you go to XDA, there are all these guides for resizing and reframing Android apps so that they'll work better in the Android desktop. You've got a what is that called? ADB. You've got to ADB a whole bunch of commands, and you need to know the screen size and resolution of what you're going to display to preset those ADB commands. Here, LG is natively figuring out, oh, well, it's a 16:9 display. I'm just going to full screen it, and I'm going to minimize the image size and the font size so that it shows appropriately on your intended device. That's enormous. There is so much that came in this one update, and they only lost to Samsung by 4 weeks. Adichie Anil. Finally in LG desktop mode. And Rue Sunshine. Yeah, the desktop mode looks a lot better than the OnePlus. The OnePlus is just the stock Android. It's what Google is doing. It's not what OnePlus is. OnePlus didn't make it. It's just a part of Android. Vazikos. Remember when Linus Tech Tips showed Juan's coverage Android 10 desktop mode in their Android 10 video for 5 seconds? I remember that. Vazikos. Okay, Juan, do the same screen sharing with your iPhone Pro. Hilarious. Adichie Anil. What? Video editing, gaming, and browsing the internet's on your phone in desktop mode? I can't tell you guys. I am so excited. It almost makes me want to just back off a bunch of phone reviews and just start making a ton of like, do this with your phone, plug this in, hook it up to a TV. I'm having to use it with a Bluetooth mouse. It's so worth it. This is getting so good. And I just, it's the kind of competition I want to see. If you're doing general computing, something like a Nook, a tiny little small form factor PC, is probably a better buy than going with these big full-size towers these days. But also a phone has all of this unused potential, has all of this unused compute power, likewise powering a completely respectable desktop computing environment. We just need the accessories. I need a smartphone dock, kind of like the Continuum dock that Windows phones had. Pop it into that, power up the monitor. I've got a full desktop ready to go. Maybe I also have like an external hard drive because Android does a good job of reading off of external hard drives. And then when I want to take it to go, it's just my phone too. And I just pull it off the charger and man, I've got my phone ready to go. Same thing with a laptop mode. Same thing. This is the kind of stuff that gets me really amped up, not just about mobile, but about computing in general. A $500 phone is going to demolish some of these older laptops that people are still carrying around. Now, obviously, if you want to do heavier lifting, I know Ronald Collins was talking about, ARM processing for graphics intense gaming and ray tracing. Obviously, a standalone console or investing a couple grand into a really sweet gaming machine, totally going to be a better fit for
that kind of usage. Excuse me. But we also have to look at the wide variety of markets and all of the consumers who aren't doing stuff like that, but are still overbuying. They're overbuying for their phone processing. They have to buy a phone and a tablet, or a phone and a desktop, or a phone and a laptop. And those consumers probably don't need to make that upgrade ever again. I'm very confident, and I was very confident with the Snapdragon 845. The Snapdragon 855 is a beast. The Snapdragon 865 coming out this year looks like it's going to be similarly more powerful with better power management features. And as long as it supports HDMI output and some kind of desktop mode, I don't think a general consumer doing light document work, web browsing, social media, and a little casual gaming is ever going to need to buy a desktop ever again. I think we're there, and that is rad. I haven't been this excited for a feature on a phone since I saw the very first version of DeX and the very first version of Huawei's desktop mode, and it never got fully realized. It was never fully exploited. Like, this is what we can do. It was one of those things in a keynote they would show off and you're like, oh yeah, you can totally do this. And everyone in the audience would be like, yeah, right. Like, I'm really going to use my phone as my computer. I've been doing it. My daughter got her first haircut. Hold on, I don't want to. I've got two mice on my desk and I just moved the wrong one. I don't want to show too much, but let me go back into desktop mode. Oh, and it also got a pretty decent save state. So, we had Dandara playing, and look at that. The phone remembered that Dandara was playing in a separate window, even though I disabled the desktop mode. Go into Power Director. Ooh, whoops, I hit the browser. Let me just minimize that. Oh, that didn't do what I expected it to do. I might have just broken the desktop mode on this in the live stream. There it is. And so we shot a ton of video for my daughter's first haircut, and I edited it while we were still, I started editing the video while we were still at the salon. Lex's first haircut, graphics, and look, she's totally walking to the salon. How exciting. I mean, the idea of taking all of this video footage off of a camera and putting it onto my desktop and then editing from there feels so horrifically antiquated. So there's a 4K 60 frame per second video for my family of Lex's first haircut. Janelle Monáe supplied the soundtrack for Lex's first salon visit. All on the phone. All on the phone. That's where we're at now. 4K UHD 60 frame per second video editing and rendering, and it was just faster and more immediate to get it done on the phone. I'm telling you, the time is now. And from Ronald Collins, you get a $40 dock, and you've got, and how crazy is this? I just want a prettier version of this. Something that actually props the phone up. You can still see the phone screen, use it like a phone. I just don't want it flopping on a desk with a bunch of cables coming out of it. But Ronald's totally correct. $40, and you'd have a pair of USB ports. You could connect a Bluetooth mouse and keyboard, HDMI output, a memory card reader, which a lot of laptops don't have anymore, and Ethernet. You can hard cable your connection to your phone and get the most stable connection. If you need to use Ethernet for your computing setup, you can still do that. You can do that on an Android device and do it for cheap. I just want this to be I would like to spend $20 more and make this more like the Continuum dock from Microsoft, which was nicer, had kind of a more weighted feel, and make it a stand so you can prop your phone up for all of the phone action that you'd still need to see. But this is phenomenal. I love this. I love this so much. And again, with an LG, you also have the world's best headphone jack, which is way better than almost all laptop headphone jacks. So, my voice is getting a little scratchy. I just wanted to highlight one last thing that we did here in the Gadget Lab that I was just really pleasantly surprised with. I do most of my content production on Panasonic. I use a Panasonic G9, which is, whoops, right there. I mirror image on my screen share. That's my G9. Great camera. Again, UHD, 60 frame per second video. I love it to death. When I busted my Samsung, I was really torn on replacing that camera. We were in a crunch. I needed to have a production camera up and running as quickly as possible. Excuse me. The Samsung NX format was dead. Samsung had already given up on their cameras, which was really frustrating, and we couldn't get a good replacement for my NX30 quickly. So Samsung quoted something like $300 to replace the filter that was in front of the sensor. The camera was fully functional. It's just there's an aliasing filter that also is what you clean, what cleans the sensor through vibration, and that's what it cracked. I just couldn't bring myself to spend $300 on a dead. It was like $250 or $300 on a dead camera system. So we opted for a Panasonic, and I decided on the G85, which was 1080p at 60 frames per second, UHD 30 frames per second. And that camera served me very, very well for my last year at Pocket Now, and then was my main production camera when I revived my standalone YouTube channel. I was very excited getting the G9 because that meant I was going to have a pair of cameras. I could do two camera shots. I could do these dual camera setups. And in fact, there are a handful of videos where I was using both cameras at the same time. But very, very shortly after getting the G9, literally a couple of weeks, the bottom panel and the tripod thread on my G85 crumbled. So it is very hard to set up a camera when you can't reliably connect it to a tripod in any kind of production space. And I sat on the agony. The camera was completely functional. It was just, I used it remotely on someone else's tripod, and I think I over torqued connecting it to the plate for the tripod head, and just the whole bottom of the camera just like it disintegrated. And the camera's out of warranty. Out of not only the Panasonic warranty, but I also had like a Square Trade, and it was out of the Square Trade warranty too. So I sat on it for a while. For the last like 6 or 7 months, it's how long it takes me to get these things done. I was just taking that. No, wait, they're right there. Mirror, my left shoulder. I was taking that full-sized tripod and breaking it down and putting my G9 up for these live streams, and then taking it off the desk, putting it all back together. And honestly, I was just afraid. I was afraid of sending it to Panasonic. I couldn't get a quote. Like, they couldn't just tell me like, oh yeah, if we just need to replace the tripod thread, it's going to be, $100 or something like that. So I didn't move on it. And I was seriously considering, like, do I get a G7? I want a separate camera to do most of my live streaming, so I'm not putting extra mileage on my G9. And I don't want to drop my G9 putting it up and down on this desk when I don't need to. So I finally, over the holidays, packed up my little G85, and I sent it off to Panasonic. And now I'm like super mad I didn't do this sooner. But it did. It was almost like an 8 or 9 day business day turnaround. So almost 2 weeks. But it's a $30 part, and it was $50 in labor, and then taxes and shipping. It's $100. And so I was like, yes, please do the repair. Send my camera back to me. And they did the repair, and they got it back to me faster than they said they would. But for $100, my G85 is back up and running. That's what we ran the live stream on today. I finally have 2 cameras again, so I'm going to start incorporating more 2 camera shots for some of my reviews and some of my video footage. And it was just, again, like the irrational, the I want to say the irrational enjoyment, the irrational, how irrationally pleasing it was to repair something. That this was something that could be fixed. It wasn't like some crazy damage to the screen on the camera or the sensor in the camera. It's just the base plate and the tripod thread needed to be replaced. And now, for $100, I'm back to a pretty killer 4K video camera being used. I mean, obviously I'm streaming in HD, but being used as my webcam. Like, this is a crazy overkill webcam, but I like the look of it better, even for just doing these sort of talky, vloggy podcasts. And again, it's something I hope we don't lose, and I hope it's something that we can continue to share. $100 was a great way to revive this, and was way more cost effective than me buying a different camera or going with a lesser solution, like a smaller webcam style setup. This is what I want. So I just needed to share that because I'd worked myself up into such a lather. I was so afraid of how much it was going to cost. Maybe I should just replace it. Or I put a lot of miles on this camera with Pocket now. Maybe I could try and flip it or sell it for parts, or get a couple $100 for it, something like that. And really, I mean, like that, the solution was staring me in the face the whole time. I was just dumb and afraid to try. And then when I did, this was exactly the way that I had hoped it would work out. So another little part of the podcast, we always try and bring up these stories, things like right to repair, but it feels good. It feels really good to fix something instead of replacing it, to repair something instead of replacing it. And that's a feeling I hope doesn't go away in a future of phones and tablets and things glued shut. I hope we can get back to some of that repairability. So folks, I think that's going to do it for us. Another longer podcast. From Matt Tyler, you could use the V50 for these streams. It's that good, we wouldn't notice. When my Samsung NX died, what was it? It was the LG V30? Yeah, I think it was the V30 that took over as my production camera until we got the G85 at Pocket now. And I liked the G85 so much I bought one for myself when I went back to doing my solo channel. But yeah, I don't think anyone noticed that there was anything different. I mean, obviously the Gadget Lab isn't the best production space, but yeah, I think I ended up doing like 4 or 5 videos where almost all of the footage was from the V30, and no one called us out. Like, it looked the same. So again, when used appropriately, we're getting a lot of work done from our phones. So hashtag feels good for the soul. And I completely agree. I haven't been this pleased with some kind of repair or support interaction in a while. So folks, we're going to wrap this up now. Thank you so much for watching. There's a ton of content coming to the channel. I say this every week, but I'm going to do a standalone video on the V50 and all of the updates for Android 10. I've got some audio kit. Like I said, some low-cost audio options coming your way. Some new in-ear monitors coming your way. I also wanted to throw a shout out. This Tuesday on All About Android, our boy TK Bay is doing his first appearance on a Twit live stream. So he met up with the producer. He met Leo Laporte. So first of all, I'm pissed because I've always wanted to meet Leo Laporte. But TK met up with Leo Laporte in Vegas, met some of the other crew there. They invited him on. I need everyone who would be inclined to watch one of my live streams. I believe they usually kick the camera feed live at around 5:30 Pacific time, 5:30 p.m. I need everyone out there supporting our Bay, TK Bay, on All About Android, because it's his first time. I mean, it's such a trip when you're a fan of a show and you're talking to the hosts and interacting with them in real time. So I need everyone out there. They've got their own like IRC channel, but like hit them up on Twitter, give the show a share. I really want his first appearance on that podcast to go well. And I know we've got the love here. I know we've got the support here. He's such a good dude. And this is a huge step for his own personal channel. TK on XDA, yeah, great. But this is TK on All About Android. So I really want us to be there in force for him. Fat Produce, TK Our Bay. So be on the lookout for that on Tuesday, tomorrow, 5:30 Pacific time-ish. And be on the lookout for all of my upcoming content. I've got some videos coming out from Newegg. We're taking a look at some RTX performance. We shot a video looking at the new DLSS. Again, it's kind of hard to explain. The video will do a better job of explaining it. But when ray tracing first came out, all of these cool lighting effects in our games would tank the frame rate, right? We were looking at 1080p gaming in Tomb Raider, and it was like 20 frames per second. But look at these amazing shadows. NVIDIA just released an update to how ray tracing can work. And Wolfenstein was the first game to implement that patch immediately following the announcement at CES. So we shot a comparison video. Holy crap. Lighting, shadow detail, and reflections fully ray traced, and the frame rate using this new sub compression was higher than with RTX off. I'm going to say that again. Turning on all the eye candy, but using this new sub compression from NVIDIA delivered faster frame rates, higher frame rates than playing the game with RTX off. So definitely be on the lookout for the Newegg channel, because we're going to dig deep into some of that graphics card performance. Really exciting stuff, guys. My next doc is coming. I'm going to be doing some more work with 2 cameras again. 2 cameras! Huzzah! And all of the lead up, we're going to be checking out some of the announcements that we're sure to see when MWC rolls around. I'm excited. 2020 is off to a really strong start. And, of course, we're going to be treating our ears better with the hashtag 2020 hearing. So be on the lookout for that content too. Folks, I so much enjoy our time together. Gotta go. Be on the lookout for all of that content. Support TK Bay, All About Android. And I want you to have an amazing week with your technology. I want you to have a happy and safe MLK Jr. Day. That, like I said at the top of the show, a moment. The moment of reflection. It's always worth using these days on the calendar to consider where we've come and where we're going to go. And I hope you'll share at least that with your family and friends. If not, get out there and, I don't know, grill up some hot dogs or something. I feel like celebration is good. I want you to have an amazing week with your technology. I want you to do awesome with your technology. I want you to be awesome with your technology. And I'll catch you back here next week for another Monday morning tech news show on the SGGQA podcast channel. Take care. Be well. I love you all. Catch you back.